Hello and welcome. My name is Sarah, my pronouns are she, her, and this is a channel about the cross-stitch projects I'm working on and the cross-stitch patterns I design. And today's special Flosstube episode is only about the patterns I design because I finally have a new release. Pansy Bloom is done. No further ado, there it is. Oh, to quote Steph from Just Keep Stitching, I love it so much. So this is Pansy Bloom. This is the second in my bloom series. So my first is Marigold Bloom, which the model is still at my local needlework shop, but there's a picture of the pattern cover. So Marigold was first, and now Pansy is second, just in time for spring or fall if you're in the southern hemisphere and you want to remember your summer flowers. So I'm going to do some details on this design first and then go into a bit of the process behind it because it's been a journey with this one and I wanted to talk about it a little bit. So I'll do the basics first, and then if you're interested, please stick around for a little more of the process behind the design. So this design is 93 stitches wide by 104 stitches tall. Marigold, it was 93 by 100, so very similar. And I stitched the model on 36 count linen in the color Luminous Warmth from Fortnight Fabrics. It's this beautiful subtle yellow. It would also look great on green. It would look great on blue. I tried a lot of different fabrics putting the floss on it, and I'm really happy that I went with the yellow. It uses 13 colors of DMC. 6 of them are purples, which I loved. And it's all full cross, except for the text at the bottom. So for mine, I used 2 strands of floss over 2 linen threads on 36 count. I really love the fullness that it gives. And then the straight stitches for the Latin name at the bottom were 1 strand of DMC 3837, which was kind of the medium purple in the pattern. And the pattern also includes a version of the text that says Pansy, if you wanted to go the common name instead of the Latin name, or you could leave the text off altogether, and it's much more of a square pattern if you wanted a square frame or a shadow box or a round hoop. It really is flexible as far as finishing. I went with an arch needlework hoop that, arch needlework frame. Got them all together eventually. Made by brynn&co, B-R-Y-N-N, which is an Australian maker. And they have an Etsy shop. I did not see these particular frames on there when I looked. Sometimes they will list a kind of variety pack with 3 different sizes. This is the large size. I was able to find them on the website Sewmondo, S-E-W-M-O-N-D-O, and all the links and things will be in the description box below. I did check on there and they have them listed still in the large size, but they are currently out of stock. There are some smaller ones that are currently available. So just keep an eye on that there if you're interested. They're very lightweight, but they're thick enough that you can stand them up on their own if you'd like. I'd probably put something behind it just to make sure to catch it, but it will stand up on its own. There's the outer piece, and then there's the smaller piece that insets right into it, and it holds the fabric taut. And then I did glue the fabric to the back side and then covered it with some craft paper. I raided my daughter's craft stash just to make it look nice because hopefully this will be hanging in my local needlework shop. So yeah, I think on not advice, but the way I tackled the stitching on this, I started in the top center and I did the pink section, and then I did the white first. I kind of worked lightest color to darkest purple. And so I would do the white and then the lighter purples and kind of work my way up to the dark shades. So you weren't trying to bring like a white stitch in over top or near a dark purple that was already in. And that seemed to work pretty well, especially because the white kind of gives you the outline and then you just fill in toward the center from there. So Pansy is now available on my Etsy shop as a PDF download, and everything in my Etsy shop is available in a standard print size and a large print size. And so for this one and for the marigold, a standard print size pattern is in landscape format, so it's long, and it has 95 columns per page, which covers, you get a little past halfway of vertical. And so it's a 2-page pattern for the standard print size. For the large print, it's a 4-page pattern. And so it's portrait orientation, and there's 50 columns per page. So fewer columns means fewer symbols, and the symbols are larger. Each, both standard and large print files include a single page version of the pattern if you're using Pattern Keeper or other digital ways to look at the pattern rather than printing it out. So hopefully there's something that works for you and the way that you like to stitch. I like to be flexible. I am going to make a print chart version of Pansy Bloom, and I will let you know if my local needlework shop is carrying that. And so I'm excited. That's how you can find it. That's Pansy. So a little bit about the process behind this, because it was similar to how I did marigold, but also a big learning experience. If you're interested, stick around for that. So both of these are different than any of my other current patterns because they started as photographs. So these were both flowers that were, Pansy was in my garden marigold was in my garden, Pansy was in my mother-in-law's garden. And so these actually started as photographs. And so I took the photograph and I removed as much of the background as I could, because my goal for these was to do a simpler, more accessible, full coverage type pattern. And so when you import a picture, it takes each pixel of that picture and assigns it to the closest possible DMC color. I use the program WinStitch. And so I didn't want to have all the background. I just wanted the bloom of the flower. And so I removed as much of the background from the picture as I could before I imported it. And then it imports in probably 200 different colors, because the lighting and the shading is different in each petal, and it's assigned to all the different colors. And I very much wanted it to be accessible in terms of materials needed. I didn't want you to have to buy 200 different colors and have 10 stitches of each. I mean, you get a beautiful result when you do that. And, a lot of patterns look great that way. That wasn't my intention with these patterns. So accessible in terms of materials that you needed, and accessible in terms of ease of stitching. When I model stitch them, I take a highlighter anytime I find a stitch that's on its own. So, one random dark pink in here, or one lighter purple that doesn't have any more of that color around it to be able to carry to. I don't want a lot of confetti or ninja stitches out there on their own. And so I will highlight them as I'm model stitching, and I'll change it to something that's nearby that's easier to stitch, so that hopefully you have a good experience. Pansy is a little more complicated than marigold, just because of all the different shades of purple and the different gradients. And to get that really stripy look, I knew that was going to be the case. So there are more colors, there's 13 versus 8, and it's a little more of a have to pay attention stitching experience, which is one of the reasons it took me so much longer to model stitch this one. And just accessible in the amount of time. Like, let's actually get a finish would be nice. It is fun to watch progress on those really big pieces, but also sometimes it just feels good to get a finish, and hopefully it won't take you nearly as long as it took me to model stitch this one. So that was the goal. And so once the picture gets imported into the program and I have all those, it matches each pixel to a DMC color, there's a feature where you can reduce the palette by 10%. So take the 10% fewest used colors and the program will automatically change them to the next closest that is already used in the pattern. And so I do that a couple times, and now we're getting, the image is getting simplified down. We're really figuring out what shades and colors I'm actually going to need. So when I did Marigold, I did not fully appreciate how lucky I was that that was the first one that I tried to do, because the petals are automatically outlined, right? There's automatically dimension with these two gold shades. And then there's the different gradations of orange, and then you need a dark red and a brown for the middle, and you're good to go. And I didn't really appreciate how lucky that was until I tried importing other flower pictures that I have to try to figure out what other ones I would do in the series. And unless there's distinctive, distinct color variations or some sort of distinction about the petals or something that's going to translate with very few colors and in a small design, it looks like a blob. It's a big blob of pink or it's a big blob of purple. And so the petals on the Marigold and those purple lines on the Pansy they were the ones that really could translate into a smaller pattern with fewer colors. And so once I got it down to less than 100 colors, there's a graph that you can see. So you can see the most used colors and the fewest used colors. And so I started looking at the medium purple tones. There were a lot of stitches that were DMC 552, and there were a lot that were 3837. They're very similar. Which one did I think fit best? And then you can change all of the other to that one. So all the 552s became 3837s and so on. There were about 4 different whites. Do you want B5200? Do you want to use Blanc? Do you want 3865? Do you want Ecru? And it changed based on, some of the petals were more in shadow in the picture. It's not a flat image. And so some of the white spaces were darker. That one took me a while to figure out. I just kind of played around with a couple things. And I thought I was going to have to use 2. And then I had this brainstorm. Have you ever created something or made a decision or figured something out where later you're like, did my brain come up with that? Wow, nice. This was that one for me. So all of the white is DMC Blanc. And then this is the lightest shade of purple. This is DMC 24. And I decided to have a cohesive outline. So the DMC 24 goes all the way around, even up through the pink section. And then I added it in or brought it in as shading to give that petal effect without having 4 different whites. And I am thrilled with how that part came out. When I started model stitching it, I was like, whew, it actually worked. It was very exciting. And so I knew I was going to have the darkest purple, 154. It's the best you can get. And then DMC 550 is the next one lightest from that. And then when it got into the lighter kind of lavender shades, I maybe could have condensed it one more time, but I really liked how it looked and it wasn't that bad to stitch. And so I left it as 6 colors of purple, and I hope that you will enjoy that because there's a lot of different shades, in between, and then especially at the edges. There's 2 shades of yellow in the middle, and then a little bit of a mint green. And then I did a lot in here, and I will try and figure out, my learning for today will be how to insert pictures, and I will try to put up the original photograph here as well. But I made this a lot more distinct in here to separate the sections, to just make it stand out. And then as I said, I stitched the pink first, and I'd had some trouble with the designing part of it, getting it down to the 3 pinks I wanted to use, and then how to have them look. And then I put some lines in, just kind of, I didn't want them to be super, super straight. I want to be kind of haphazard. So I put those in and I stitched that all first, and I liked how it looked. And then I started stitching with the really distinct purple lines, and the pink section did not work for me anymore. And I thought it was because I thought I would need stronger lines maybe to match the purple section. And I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. I did not want to rip the whole pink section out. So I just kept stitching the rest, knowing that when I put the last stitch in down here, I wasn't going to want to rip out up here, but I kept going anyway. And I got the whole thing done, and I looked at it and I was like, can you live with it? And the answer was no. And I knew the answer was no. I just didn't want to own up to it before I was done. And I think that is why this model stitch took so long, because I knew I was going to have to address that, but I didn't want to. So when I had originally finished the pink section, there were those lines that didn't match. And I took it into my local needlework shop, just kind of to show her in progress. And she said she didn't mind it. She thought it was fine. And she said, you know, you don't need it to be as bold as the other piece because you don't want them to compete, which I think is true. And so after thinking about it for a few days, I said, well, maybe there shouldn't be the lines there at all then, to have the pink be more of a kind of a background or a base to then make the purple pop. And so that would mean I would only have to take out those light stitches in the middle, and then I could fill it in with that color. And that seemed much more manageable to me than ripping everything out. And so I finally got the scissors out and got the needle and was starting to frog the stitches. And once the stitches were frogged out, I was like, yes, this is going to be better. And then when I started filling them in, it took me one day to fill everything in and be done. And it was like, okay. So I'm really glad that I left some of that around the edges, but then I filled in the centers. And I think it goes, and I feel a lot better about it. So to anyone out there, even, you know, if you're working on anything and something is bothering you about it, trust that instinct, but know that you don't have to fix it right away. It's probably easier if you do, but if you don't know how, just sit with it. Sit with it for a while and show it to other people, but know that they might say, it's fine. Don't ignore the voice in your head. Like, just sit with it. So now that I have 2 blooms under my belt, I think I can officially call it a series now that there's 2. And I really want to do at least one more. I'd love to have one on a blue fabric. I mean, you know me, put everything on blue. I can't believe I haven't done one on blue yet. And so trying to figure out a different color scheme, you know, I don't want to do, there's so many beautiful white and purple flowers out there, but I just did white and purple. And so finding a flower that is going to give me the unique details that are going to stand out in the pattern and also be kind of a different color scheme is something I'm searching for. But I have very big plans for my garden this year, like ridiculously large plans for my garden. So we will see what inspiration comes this year, but there hopefully will be more blooms to come. So I hope you enjoy them. If you have any questions, please leave them below. This is going to be appearing everywhere on Instagram and Pinterest and everywhere I can think of to try and get the word out that it's available. If you want to be the first to know about future bloom releases and other patterns, maybe some sneak peeks even, the link to sign up for my newsletter is in the description box below. Next up on the list is to work on my next freebie, which will hopefully be available later this spring. So stay tuned for that. And thank you so much for your support and for your interest in my new release, and happy stitching. Do what you can when you can. Bye.